Radio from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertisers.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to the listening public, the wonderful people here on the island of Nevis, those in St. Kitts, those who listen religiously and regularly in the wider Caribbean. Good evening to those of our family and friends and regular listeners in the United States and Canada. And good evening, of course, to those across the pond in the United Kingdom and elsewhere. Wherever you may be, good evening. It's a beautiful night here in Nevis, and I'm your host for another edition of On the Mark, Mark Brantley. And this, as we say, is Straight Talk Across the Narrows. You know, on Wednesday night at 8 p.m., this is the place to be, right here with us on Vaughan Radio. You have been with us for the last several years. By my tally, it's something almost 14 years now. And that is, I believe, a good record to have, because we have been bringing talk radio to you, 2 hours of commercial-free radio. Still, the only show in the Federation that offers you 2 hours of commercial-free talk radio. The idea behind that is simply that we allow you maximum time to engage, and whatever the topic of the day may be. Sometimes, of course, we come with a topic and you have no interest in that topic. When the lines open, you talk about what you want to talk about. As I like to say, this is a people's show, and so it gives everybody an opportunity and gives them a voice. This is an important exercise in democracy. Freedom of speech is clearly one of the major foundational blocks of any robust democracy, and the ability for us to communicate, to disagree even at times, but to do so respectfully, and to engage in debate which is uplifting and meaningful. I think that is important. People say to me all the time, "Oh, I don't like to hear when Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so call into your show. You should cut them off." And I said, no. They have a right to call in and to share their view and opinion. That is what democracy is about. It is the ability to accept divergent views. Sometimes I am not all right, they are not all right. The right position lies somewhere in the middle. And if we learn to listen and take on board what is being said, I think that it will make for better Nevis. And that is what we are all striving to do. This is a wonderful night here, as we say, a night that the Lord has made. We are going to rejoice and be glad in it. We're going to have a good conversation this evening. If you see me wearing a mask, it must mean that I have guests. I'm not introducing them yet, because they're going to take over the show in a little bit and tell you why they're here and share some very, very critical information with you, and we would, of course, invite a conversation with them when the time comes. So tonight looks to be interesting. Before I get into the night, however, please allow me a moment to congratulate all the students. The CAPE and CSEC results are back. I'm told that many of our students across the Federation have done extremely well. I would want to congratulate them all, congratulate their parents, their teachers, all who would have contributed. This year was a very, very trying and difficult year because, of course, they couldn't have a regular school sessions due to COVID, which interrupted all of our lives going back to February, March of this year. And so for students, nevertheless, to have done well is demonstrative of the resilience of our people. And I think that is important. Some people like to say, "Oh, if hardship come, we don't know what we're going to do." Reality is that the Nevisian spirit is such that we have always responded in a positive way. And whatever the obstacle, we have always found a way to overcome. And I think that is something that we ought to take on board. And let nobody tell us otherwise, because we have demonstrated over our history, our forebears have demonstrated that struggle is what has forged that Nevisian psyche and that Nevisian spirit and that ability to get things done even in difficult circumstances. And it is that reservoir of strength that I rely on as the Premier of Nevis at this point in our history to get things done. And also sometimes when the road ahead appears impossible, you fall on your knees, you pray, you ask for guidance, and then you roll up your sleeves and you get to work. And that is the only way we know. That is the Nevisian way, and that is how we must continue. So congratulations to all of these young people. They say that they are our future. I like to say that they are our present, because we have to think about them in that sense so that we involve them in what we're doing And that is, I think, a very important approach to development. Get involved in that youth. They have the energy, they have the spirit, they have the vim, vigor and vitality, and to bring them into the fold and have them at work at the earliest possible time, putting their shoulders to the wheel, inculcating in them the ethics of hard work, integrity, standing up for what is right, justice. All of those things, I think, are critical, and we need to continue in that vein. So congratulations to them. On a sad note, I would have had my press conference yesterday and did report yesterday that Nevis had recorded 2 new COVID cases. Those cases were the first in Nevis in the last 5.5 months. And so we had a good run when we had no cases, but sadly we had 2 cases. Those cases were imported. That is important that people understand that they did not originate here. The people were not on island. They came to the island. These are nationals, residents of Nevis and nationals of St. Kitts and Nevis who came from abroad and sadly were infected. So they came in. I believe that the detection, though, the good part about it, or the good aspect of it, the good takeaway for us is that our systems worked, because they came in, clearly they were detected early, they have been in quarantine and now isolated, and thus far it appears that they're in good health, and we pray for their speedy recovery. That brings the total to 6 cases in Nevis since this pandemic started. We have been blessed by God that we have had no deaths, no needs for hospitalization, and that all thus far, other than these 2 who were recently diagnosed, have recovered in full. And so we will continue to pray and continue to do all that we are told that we must do. Tonight we are here wearing a mask, for example. The island and the country is getting ready for a broader reopening of our borders, and we must, of course, look to that. There's some element of concern, and I understand that, but of course we cannot remain closed off from the world forever. And the economy has been struggling badly. Government revenue is down. Many people are out of work. We definitely need to get our larger employers back, the plants reopen, and people working again. And so that is critical, because our people have to live. What I'm urging our people to do is to continue to be vigilant. These 2 cases demonstrate that we can't relax our guard, that we can't say, oh, we are COVID-free, and therefore we could free up the place. Yes, we want to resume normal lives, but at the same time we have to be prudent, we have to be sensible, and we have to remain vigilant. Now, I won't continue with my usual soliloquy, as I call it, my usual monologue, because I have important people here. I don't want them to fall asleep on me. So I'm going to just say welcome to you again. Welcome to our guests. We have 2 gentlemen who are here. I always like when they're here because we have some interesting discussions. As one of them said to me outside, people like to talk about Rasta. And so I don't want you to talk about Rasta tonight. I have some gentlemen here with me. They will introduce themselves. Gentlemen, good evening. Welcome back to On The Mark.
Yes, greetings. In the name of His and Her Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I, and Empress Menen, God and Goddess, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, Rastafari. My name is Ras Marcus Tafari. I'm the chairman of the One Love Rastafari movement, and I is here to speak about the 24th anniversary of our celebration, our 1-week celebration activities that we're going to be putting on, which already started from Saturday, and tonight is one of the forum that we are on to talk about, the One Love Rastafari movement, the works which we have been doing over the past 21 years. But before we can get into our program, within Rastafari Liberty, we deal with the spiritual part of it. So I would like to exalt the Most High name by praising His, giving thanks for being here tonight, So we glorify the King's name, Haile Selassie I the I. We give thanks at all times, knowing that He bring us through over the past years, for the many works that we have done within the liberty of Farai. Eli,
Selassie,
Selassie,
King
King Rastafari, Empress Meninai, great ancestors I, great gods and goddess of the ancient and black eternal race. His foundation is in the holy mountains. The Lord loveth the gate of Zion more than all the dwelling of Jacob. Glorious things are spoken of thee, O city of the Almighty. I will make mention of Rahab and Babylon to them that know me. Behold, the Philistine Tyre in Ethiopia, that this man Haile Selassie was born there. And of Zion it shall be said, this and that man was born there, and the highest he said shall establish Ethiopia. Haile Selassie shall written and counted of his children, Rastafari, who says this and that man was born within Ethiopia, as well as players and singers of the instrument, they shall be there. That springs I in thee. But Haile Selassie, King Rastafari, Empress Meninai, great ancestors I, great gods and goddess of the ancient and black eye eternal race. Glory to word, glory to sound, glory to the power of the living eye. Haile Selassie, King Rastafari. So let the words of thy mouth and the meditation of thy heart be accepted in thy sight. Haile Selassie, strength and thy redeemer, Rastafari. One perfect love. To my partner.
Yes, greetings. I'm no stranger to Van Radio. This is Ras Iroy. Hope you can recognize me behind the mask. But tonight I'm here joining the chair. I myself, I am the co-chair of the One Love Rastafari movement. And we're here to just give you an idea of the things that we've been doing over the past years and the direction in which we hope to take Rastafari within Nevis, St. Kitts Nevis, the Caribbean and the world at large. The direction in which we think we want to take Rastafari in the 21st century and beyond. So, looking forward to an interesting night. One love.
Yeah, I will give you some information now on the One Love Rastafari movement.
So, and just to give an idea as to the whole group and the formation of the group, you know, it was quite a number of years ago when the conscious minds came together, really. One of the things that really stood out was the kind of struggles that the group had in the early stages. So I just kind of wanted us to pay attention to that aspect of it, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, so the One Love Rastafari movement was founded in September 25th, 1999. With Rasses, kings, queens, and youth from Nevis answered the call to organize and centralize the Rastafari community. The One Love Rastafari movement has since met every Saturday, then at the Silver Dollar, at Barnsgut, and now at Natural Liberty at the Armory Farm in Newcastle. And that is in front of the Patry. Nobody can really miss it because whenever you're passing, you're going to see the red, gold, and green flag up. You're going to hear Nyabingi music chanting, you know. You're going to smell the Ital food. You know, everything isn't just nice there. So I continue. In the past, you would have hosted 6 parental workshops over a week and in the 5 parishes in Nevis. This was done through collaboration with social development. We have catered and served for free to senior annual Christmas party, hosted the Caribbean Rastafari Organization, CRO, 13 Summit in Nevis, including in that we're hosting the summit with sanctification of Rastafari youth. We went into the community dealing with health, have workshops, invite a Jamaican educator, Yassa Rastafari in Nevis.
Well, I guess as we continue, those were some of the things that we would have done over the past. But today, we can say that throughout the year, we come together on a regular basis, and we find reasons to celebrate or to celebrate our historical dates. So we have monthly celebrations going on throughout the year. Of course, one of this is the Black History Month celebrations, where we actually still go around the island, touching every parish, presenting an ital or a natural food, vegan food hamper to at least 2 elders in each parish. We continue to give educational material to the schools and other learning institutions here in Nevis. I think we would have touched all the government schools already over the past years, the two libraries, and even some of the private schools. We would have made those kind of donations. African Liberation Day, 25th of May, is also a big celebration, one that we celebrate. We have different ones throughout the year, in July, in August. In December, when we celebrate Kwanzaa, Mark, you would know about that. You're one of our major sponsors there at Kwanzaa time in December. And this is done in honor of one of our local elders, Brother Kofi, who would have transitioned. Over the years, we would have demonstrated camaraderie. We are a big member of the ORU, which is the Organization of Rastafari Unity, which is a national organization. It's the coming together of Rastas from St. Kitts and Nevis. And so when we speak with one voice, the same accord. And One Love is a very important member there. We actually have the chair and the secretary of that national organization are members of the One Love Rastafari movement. We are due to meet in Nevis the first Sunday in October, and we're actually doubling up in Nevis, so October and November meetings would be held in Nevis. I think one in November would probably be at Brown Hill. That's a big celebration. We have been volunteering throughout the community over the years, and I think it's very important that we make mention of this, because we do at times seek the cooperation of the general public. And so it's important that you know what we do with your money or with your donations. We have been contributing to graduations in the primary schools for quite a number of years, at least 10 years. We are sponsors during the sports of many of the primary schools in Nevis over the same period of time. The One Love Rastafari movement, in collaboration with Natural Liberty, we have a youth club, and that youth club would meet on Saturday and learn from an Afrocentric curriculum: art, craft, farming, drumming, animal husbandry, the whole works. But during the week, One Love also volunteer teaching these youths academics. Empress Shelley would zeroing in on the reading and the whole language part of it and the maths. I'm usually good in helping the children with the science projects. And so we would have been doing this for quite some years on a voluntary basis, right on the farm, right out there in Newcastle, opposite the Pottery. We have also piloted a project at the St. James Primary School. We call it the Tire Recycling Organic Project, where we have tires at the school, and each child has a tire in which they plant. And so this whole project is incorporated within the curriculum of the schools. So every class gets a chance to go to the garden. We have tidied it up for this year. We are still working out how we're going to work out the situation with the project based on the COVID situation. But we still would have individual classes using the experience there in the in the garden to enhance their project or their teaching, the actual lesson that they're teaching?
Yes. We continue with the works of the One Love Rastafari movement. We speak some more on the St. James's organic farm that we're doing over there at this moment in time. We just finished, cleaning up the tires and so on. So we are expected to go in and plant some potatoes, sorrel, spinach, things which is going to be important to the children. I remember that we're saying we're not going to be using any chemical. We are organic farm because we don't want the children to get involved with chemical. You know what chemical can do to the body of the children. The works of the One Love Rastafari continues when we be able to get children going to school with the Dreadlocks Covenant. I remember I going to school, the trial and tribulation I had because I couldn't get to carry my dreadlocks in school because of circumstances. I couldn't even say Rastafari because if I say Rastafari, I would get suspended for 2 weeks out of school. I would throw out the class. But today, I decided, I got to fight for the right of I children. And I children is going to school now with the dreadlocks.
Yes, right.
And without vaccination, Again, I should give thanks to the government. It's been a fight, but the government had allowed, the children to go to school without vaccination. And that is part of our conviction, within Rastafari liberty. We don't see vaccination as part of our liberty. We exempt that, But it's not all Rastafari who do that. But if you are pure and clean and see the liberty of Rastafari, we will never vaccinate your children. So yes, the contribution to a few primary school sports meet within the graduation ceremony, partners with many government department offices including community development annual Alexander Hamilton Tea Party, Camp Refresh, many community clubs, schools, churches, and organs around the island promoting healthy food and beverage alternative. Assist with the homework assistance program, and when the payment was distributed, One Love kept it up for free. Volunteer with assisting students and reading with assisting with the maths. Acceptance of herbal doctor. No, I take that one.
Well, gentlemen, if I can interrupt, because you're listening. We have some time together this evening, and I know people are tuned in. I was actually checking my phone, and there are a number of people who are watching us on Facebook Live as well. Before you continue with the impressive list of contributions that you have made, I wanted you to share with us a bit about the journey. Because if you say 1999, it sounds like 21 years that you're celebrating in terms of coming together and forming some kind of organization, which, in addition to all the contributions that you're listing that you've made, clearly now gives an organized voice to members of your faith here on the island of Nevis. I wanted to get a sense, because in my own experience, a lot of people, particularly younger people, see what they see today and take it for granted. Meaning that very few people understand the struggle that others would have endured, so that what they take now and see now as normal could be normal. I was particularly interested because I don't even know if you recall, but when we were both younger people, I think you had approached me about a child of yours going to school with dreadlocks. I don't know if you remember that. And I was then practicing as a lawyer, and we had got involved and got the matter resolved without recourse to the courts, because it turns out that there had been a difference of approach between St. Kitts and Nevis, and so we were able to speak to the relevant authorities and get it resolved. But you see in the school system now people with dreadlocks, and I would think that you walk around, it's not even something that anybody would remark on now, because it's become unremarkable. But here it is that you're telling me, Ras Marcus, that if you just say Rastafari, back in your time you get suspended for 2 weeks from school. And the thought of going to school with dreadlocks. Matter of fact, I recall that used to sometimes when I was in primary school, I used to have a pick, a comb, and check your hair because you had to be groomed. And recently there was a ruling in Jamaica. I don't know if you all have been following that case, about a child, which surprises me, but a child going to school with dreadlocks, and it went to the court, and the court made a ruling to suggest that the grooming requirements were, if you will, trumped any right of the child to go to school with dreadlocks. It created a lot of controversy in Jamaica, and clearly is winding its way through the court system there. So it tells you that this struggle is not over, but nevertheless, I believe that we could all accept and agree that where Rasta is today in 2020 is a long, long way from where Rasta was. IROI, for example, somebody went sixth form, and I think IROI, everybody expected he would have been a lawyer and three-piece suit and Ray and this kind of thing. You chose a particular path, and I know that that path would not have been without some criticism. You know, people who would sit back and say, boy, he could have do this, he could have do that, he chose to do that instead. This is Nevis, and we understand how it works. But I've always respected the fact that you chose your path, and you were true to it. And in a way, there's a lesson that people can learn from that as well, in terms of being true to your convictions, whatever they may be, despite the fact that they may be unpopular. And on a previous program we had here, when we talked about cannabis, marijuana, herb, whatever you want to call it, ganja.
Ganja.
And the same thing, because it's fashionable now for everybody to talk about marijuana. Even the politicians now talking about marijuana. They're making marijuana a political issue now. Everybody want to talk about ganja and all the benefits. But Rasta has been in the middle of that. Gone to jail for it, harassed for it, do a kick down for it, family in prison for it. And now, of course, you've seen that 180-degree turn, where even those who used to condemn you are now saying that they want to see the benefits of this thing, and the wider benefits.
Yep.
You know, so it's a journey, though, and that's what I'm saying. You know, a man now who burn a spliff and police not harassing him because of a sort of new look at this issue. He may take that for granted, and he don't realize that other people went to jail and got their head bust and get harassed and all of this over the same spliff. So I think that journey, that's the first thing I would ask, in terms of, you know, I know what you're doing now, but when you, in 1999, 21 years ago, when you had the vision to put this thing together and come together with your brethren and sisters to form this thing, you know, what would have informed that, and what has that journey been like?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I think I might be the only person who was in that founding group of persons at the time. But you know, it's interesting because we had a lot of youths. We had a lot of youths. What happened? We had a lot of Rastas in Nevis, and I don't want this to be misunderstood. This wasn't the start of Rastafari in Nevis, you know, but it was one of the organized moves. Because there were moves before. We had black circles. These were guys who were Rastafari doing their thing. But this movement at that time, we had a lot of youths, and we had the assistance of the Nyabinghi from St. Kitts, who religiously came over every Saturday and for us to gather. But what was interesting in that time was we had a lot of fight, especially from the whole island. The police, I could remember, early in that movement, we had guys like Maccabee, Tyon Wilkin. I could remember Maccabee going around to the elders in the community distributing food hamper. And I think the system tried to shut that down because they saw a force that was coming. And I think, you know, they preferred, to me, if they had allowed these youths to remain within Rastafari, they might have still been here today. No disrespect, but I think the authorities then, I could remember, I was one of the victims of that system. I was among some youths and the police came to raid and search. I did nothing, I said nothing. Next thing you know, I was charged for obstruction. The police went to court and say, because of my presence, I had influence on the youths, and so I am guilty of obstruction because the youths gave obstruction. And I was found guilty, and I lost my jobs with government because of that, and has never been compensated up until this day. And I carry a criminal record. But this is not just about me. Just an example, a real example where you don't have to wonder if the person telling the truth. But what I'm saying, we found parents who no longer wanted their children to be harassed by police fighting the movement. I get enough cuss. But we persisted and we came through. We remember we literally had to hold demonstrations against the system so that our children can go to school without the locks actually being covered. And when I really checked, there wasn't even a policy. There wasn't a written policy. It was illegal what we were doing to the children at that time. And even until today, we still see some of these policies which gradually, you know, as we say, over time, we have to get them changed, because even when they were put together at that time, might have been a different mindset. But when you look at them today, they're actually discriminating against a lot of our youths. I, for one, am convinced that the policy to make boys cut their hair in school is discriminating against boys, because your length of your hair has nothing to do with grooming. If girls can have long hair, boys can have long hair. There shouldn't be a difference in that policy. Our youth should be allowed to wear the plaits or the locks. You know, it's an African expression. But the struggle today is still real. We find that we've been left out of a lot of things, but it is not as hard as before.
Let me touch on one point that you raised, because you mentioned youngsters being around, and if I'm understanding you correctly, what I'm getting from you is that the pressures of society would have forced some of those youngsters away from your organization and your faith.
Right.
And one of the observations that I've always made privately, even when I attend your sessions, as you have been kind enough to invite me from time to time, particularly when you're celebrating Kwanzaa, but also publicly, is that for the most part, one never hears Rasta being mixed up in any crime and criminal behavior and violent behavior and that kind of thing. It's an existence that appears to be peaceful. It is. You know, people don't get caught up in a row. And I think that is uncontroverted. The evidence is there. The only criminality and criminalization of Rasta over the years has tended to be associated with marijuana. But in terms of saying
that is wrong.
Well, but I'm just saying, so in terms of saying Rasta thief and rob and kill and them kind of thing, we have not seen that. And so the point you make has, to my mind, some weight to it. That if some youngsters were allowed to stay on that particular path, we may not have had a level of violence and criminality that besieged us for many, many years here on the island. And a lot of people were asking, well, how did the island reach to that stage? But it might be some of the very factors that we are talking about. That, frankly, I find, that in Nevis and St. Kitts, I don't know, in my next life, I may want to be a preacher or something, because I think there has to be more forums where people can discuss in an open way some of the issues. A lot of issues we have in the country, people just push under the carpet.
Yep.
And when you're dealing with people and you push things under the carpet and there's no mechanism, there's no ability to discuss, a lot of times those frustrations build up, and then you end up with undesirable results and consequences. Me move on to one other thing, because you said something, as Marcus, which I think is controversial. I don't think you're trying to cause controversy, but it is controversial when you say about the vaccine and vaccination. The reason I mention that is I know, as you say, that some members of your faith have the view that vaccination is wrong. It's a violation. And if we understand what a vaccination is, it's basically injecting into your body some of the very disease that you're trying to fight. And this is me in my layman's language. I'm not a doctor, of course, but that's how I understand it. So if they inject you with a flu, the flu virus or whatever it may be, and then your body now is be able to develop the fight, the antibodies to deal with that. That is how I understand vaccination works. So it's almost as if it's training your body to fight a particular thing. You're saying that you're opposed to that. That is very relevant, because we have had, for example, the assertion that vaccination is, for example, what has helped to do things like polio and various other diseases which over the years killed and maimed thousands, if not more, people across the world. So measles, mumps, rubella, all of these things that we've had, we have basically been able to eradicate certain diseases like polio from our shores now for a long time, and vaccination has been credited with doing that. Now we're in an era of COVID. That's what I'm really getting to now. And everybody is saying that the world is now waiting for a vaccine to be developed for COVID. So how does Rasta fit in to that? Where you have something which is infectious, you have something that people are saying, well, look at the three of us here, masked up and whatever, trying to social distance, everybody have their hand sanitizer. So when it comes to the point now where the world says, and WHO, World Health Organization, or PAHO, or whoever, said this now is the vaccine, and Rasta say, we don't want our children vaccinated because that is violating what we believe. How do you see that fitting into the society as we try to fight this new threat, which is COVID? And I say COVID because that is current, but I anticipate that other things are going to emerge from time to time.
Greetings again. You see, we are Italians, right? And being a vegan, we develop a strong immune system by eating a lot of alkaline food and so on. You don't really use food which is acidic, you know. We use food that will build up the immune system. And you know, if your immune system are weak, right, that's most times when the COVID or any other kind of disease will step in. Now, as a Rastafari, I don't believe in vaccination, right? And part of our conviction is that we will not accept vaccination under no circumstances. You know, I don't think taking a vaccine into INI system gonna help cure COVID. If I build up my immune system by eating the right food, I could fight COVID that way. You know?
Well, I understand the theory.
Can I
Yes, go ahead, go ahead.
Interesting. You know, first I want to start with how credible is the World Health Organization, PAHO, and all of them, because I rate them fail. Over the years, history has taught us that the kind of things that these world organizations have been involved in has been to the detriment of INI people. We are on a population control drive, and that is exactly what the New World Order is all about. And so, this whole vaccination and COVID, and it's just another one of them that is here with us.
All right, before you go on, explain to me, because you see, there's some who are going to tell you right now that you sound like one of the conspiracy theorists who say that there's all this conspiracy out there to do this. Don't get me wrong. when you look at things like the Tuskegee
there
experiment
you
and all
go.
that,
There you go.
we understand that there have been experiences in the world where companies have used Africans in Africa and elsewhere, even in the United States, to test things. I think the Tuskegee experiment had to do with, in fact, syphilis, if I recall, was what people were being injected with to see what the effects would be on the human body. Even in terms of a lot of these vaccines for COVID and the trials, I saw something recently, for example, where people were asking if they could do the trials, the human trials in the Caribbean. And I thought to myself, why? Do it in your own country, you know? You have the COVID, do the trials in your country. But you still have those who say, man, listen, it is a conspiracy theory to think that some men in some room somewhere are saying, let us come up with something to see how we could kill off black people or kill off, some segment of the population. So how do you respond to that kind of skepticism in terms of what you're saying?
They are facts. I have a document. It's been declassified, where during Kissinger time, I mean, there was a study on the world population, the effects and growth and possible solutions. I mean, it is right there, declassified. In the Tuskegee experiment, this was at the knowledge of the World Health Organization. You can Google that and find that. And so I say, yes, they are questionable. We hear people say these things are man-made. So if they are man-made, there must be some kind of agenda that these brethren and sisters are on. Look at how this whole thing is playing. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm here wearing my mask because something is there. But there's also a detriment to wearing a mask. And so you have to weigh the circumstances, where you have to try and balance. We would maintain our immune system, the height of our immune system, which is the primary, I think. And I think this seems to be put at the bottom of the table, but I think that's the primary move.
Sure.
Set your immune system on high. One of the things that Rastafari is also looking at these times is repatriation, because a lot of us are repatriating at this time, especially trying to beat the second wave.
When you say repatriation, in this context, what do you mean?
Going home.
To Africa?
To Africa, Ghana, Tanzania, they're waiting, they're begging us to come. Citizenship is there, and if we cannot function in the West, it's time to go home. Africa waits its creators.
How do you respond to the view that we are in Nevis and Nevis is home?
Well, I'm also going straight to that.
Yes.
In that Rastafari Nevis, we are seeking lands from the government. We want to be able to set up our community. And so Rastas who want to live in a particular way and out of this whole Babylon craziness have the opportunity. And we're talking, hillside acres where we can, just like in Jamaica, where we can set up our community and live our lifestyle and not have to be contaminated with all this craziness. That is also one of the things that we are looking at. We need to be taking these people to the World Court, because around the world, this is not a Nevis or a Rasta issue. There are many conscious groups around the world who have serious issues with what is going on, and how at times one's human right is being violated in this new world order context. We are under world pandemic, so there goes your rights. I mean, let's take for example, we are now in some discussions with some authorities, because it seems as though one of our colleges demanding a temperature check at the head, when in fact you can take temperature on different places of the body. There is the question as to what effect can the gun have on you, being pointed at the head. Now, there's all kind of things. Scientifically, they're saying it's not dangerous. Okay, let's take that. It's not dangerous. There's also a psychological effect of a gun being pointed to your head, because it's shaped just like a 9mm. And then there's also, if it's causing so much concern and there are optional ways of taking the temperature, why would you have an institution demanding that people take the temperature by the head?
Well, I confess that issue came to my attention only yesterday. And I have referred it to the Minister of Education here in Nevis so that he can engage with his counterpart on St. Kitts. But I myself am surprised because initially the temperature was being taken, they point the gun at the forehead, as you say. But now all the hotels and thing here in Nevis, I went to Foreseen the other day, they pointed at your wrist, at your hand, and they're able to take the temperature just as effectively. So as you said, there are alternatives. So if somebody's uncomfortable with it being pointed at their forehead, I don't understand what the problem is. That to me is just a level of ignorance on people's part where they just say, well, boy, it have to be done this way and no other way. Because
Right.
if a man don't want it pointed at his forehead and he hold out his hand and you point at his wrist, what is the problem there?
But man, I for one, I'm not taking no vaccination, and I would be willing. I mean, okay, and these are the kind of things where if we decide we're not taking the vaccination, then allow us to do our thing. You can come and you can do your tests as much as you want, because we can guarantee you that if we're able to keep our immune system high, live clean, practice good hygiene as what we should do and not always do. But hygiene should be something top on the list. We're clean people. We shouldn't have to be waiting till now for people to be washing their hands and doing all these kind of things. One of the things that I encourage though is you have to spend some extra time breathing. Because if you're going to be compromised under a mask for some hours, you have to spend extra time getting fresh air, starting your day with some good breathing exercises and so on, and filling up that that whole capacity of air, of oxygen. And the simplest chance you get to remove it, you do the same thing. So there are ways in which we can survive. We have to abide by the protocols, even when we're having meetings and so on. But at the same time, you can do things that you can help until we can solve some of these issues.
Tell me a bit, let's segue. I know you have some more information you want to share, but you tell me that you're going to be with me for a little bit tonight, so we have a chance to have a conversation. Tell me a bit about your efforts in terms of food security. I think that again is an area where Rasta has and those of your faith have really stood out. I think it goes back, if I'm understanding IRI properly, talking about lifestyle and clearly growing your own food and, as you say, building a strong immune system. All of that, the way you cook, the way you choose not to use a lot of salt and that kind of thing, all of that over the years we have known to be a healthier approach. I laugh now because nowadays you see expensive restaurants if something is organic. Rasta been organic for a long time.
All the time.
So, these are some interesting things. Is it that we have a call? Okay. Can we take a call and we come right back? Let's go to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Okay, that call is gone. So, the question for me is in terms of food security, as the country now seems to be pivoting and again seeing the wisdom of being able to better feed ourselves. And I will say from the position of Premier and other Nevis Island government and cabinet, we decided early o'clock in this pandemic that food security had to be something that we re-emphasize, and we have made some resources available. Let us take this call and then come back. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
Yes, good evening, sir.
Good evening to you.
And how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Okay. Good evening to the rest of the panel.
Greetings.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to interject quickly to emphasize that the week of activities, and on Friday, there will be a radio quiz throughout the day. And so I need to let the listening public know that they need to listen to tonight's proceedings very attentively, because most of the questions for the quiz will come from tonight's proceedings. Thank you for the time being.
Okay,
Yes, sir. Give
my
thanks.
brother. Well, you have a lot of crickets where you are, man.
Yes, you know what?
The crickets singing. I say you have a lot of crickets where you are. We can hear them in the
Oh,
background.
yeah. You got anything to help me kill them out?
No, man, they
Don't
don't
kill him.
They're serving a purpose.
Oh, okay.
All right. Okay,
Right.
thank you. So we'll go back to this whole issue of food security.
Yeah. You see, Ivan is a vegan, right?
So what do we mean by vegan? So you don't eat any meat? So not even fish?
For the past 40 years, I exempt all flesh from my system. Anything to do with fish, poultry, dairy.
So okay, so you don't use milk or anything either?
I don't use milk, nothing like that.
So what would your say a breakfast consist of? Educate us. In terms of a vegan, you in your life and your family, I would assume, what would say you eat for breakfast?
Well, you know, I'm a hard worker, and most of the mornings I leave without breakfast. You know, but then the Empress would get up and make some porridge for the children. She would get some tofu, you know, the tofu, with vegetables, you know, the lettuce, spinach, and the kind of things, and some bush tea. And then she would create her own, you know, vegetable, vegan way style food for the children, because I don't allow the children to eat from the school neither. Because I'm strictly vegan, just like I am. They never eat anything from fish, poultry, or dairy. You know, that's part of building the immune system against the COVID, you know, that we're speaking about at this moment in time. But for food security, the one of the Rastafari movement is involved in the farming, organic farming. And in these times here, we need the government help as well, because we're fencing up our land, because the monkey been destroying us over the past years, right? And we're looking forward for the help from the government in getting the fencing wire.
So you mean you're looking forward? The fencing wire been available now for months, so you all haven't taken advantage? We've done a whole supply of fencing wire, done give out.
Now let me explain.
We had to order more. Let
me explain, right? At that time, right, we did not get everything put together as yet, so that we could get the fencing wire.
So you missed the boat, that's what you're saying?
We didn't never, and I mean, you're talking about, you're the premier of the land, and you're speaking about food security.
Yes, but I'm saying we put something in place.
We cannot miss the boat, as you say, right? There should always be something in place for food security. We're talking about it at this moment in time. And we're looking forward to get the wires from the government to help keep the monkeys and so on from out of the land. We're doing a big farm in 7 acres of land. 7 acres of land.
In the same location over by Potworks, sir?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're looking forward for the government to help secure us with the wires, so we could plant our food to keep out the monkeys and all that kind of things there. Because, you know, right now the tourism sector is down, and the government is, you know, you have to turn to agriculture to help build up that sector. The economy is down at this moment in time.
Well, I recognize that. Hold your thought, because this issue of food security is very relevant. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the mark.
Yes, me again. Hello?
Yes, me. Go ahead.
On that same subject, the government and the agriculture department. Why is it that we don't already send? Let the guys start things straight and don't just have nothing, not because they're on the mark. They should be told. It is the government and the people that are having agriculture and farm. Instead of dealing with people who are interested in farming, all this is.
Hello? Hello? Okay, caller, could you call back in, please? And share your view, because I'm interested. The reason I'm interested in this is because I keep talking about it, because I've been proud of the government's response in the context of greater food security. We made it a priority as our response to COVID on Nevis to ensure that we made certain concessions available for farmers. So, for example, 6 months we say no cost for water, which is a critical part of farming. We provided free fencing. We provided fertilizer. We provided free land preparation, where the backhoe and the plow and thing would come and prepare the land. We even went so far as to provide some staff from the agriculture department. Say, listen, where necessary, we go out and help people reap, we help people whatever, as an assistance to our farmers. We have really not just the farmers, but the fisher folk We provided things like a roll of fish pot wire for free, the second roll half price. Now the Minister of Agriculture did say to me that the response for the free fencing wire was overwhelming. And clearly the government has limits. We can't just continue for it to be free for time immemorial. There was a time frame on it. And he said that we had now had to go and buy additional wire. And that additional wire, we were now asking that there be a payment for that on a discounted basis. But this is something that I will prepare to take up, because I know that you're serious about the farming. You may not be able to get wire to fence 7 acres, but certainly whatever assistance you can get would be helpful.
Sure.
So I'll be interested in hearing what Brother Brigo is saying, because I think that that will be important. There's somebody on the line, so let me go back and see if it's him. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello? Hello? Okay.
Well, Mark, let me weigh in on this, because you see, it's that land at Nisbet that we are occupying has been with the Rastafari movement for quite some time, and we've had a lot of challenges. Some of the major challenges, just like every farmer: security, the monkeys, water, and assistance. Now, we entered into some negotiations prior COVID with the agriculture department prior to COVID, and we were made some promises in terms of assistance. We wanted to clean the land, plow the land, fence the land. That assistance was not forthcoming. We eventually got some assistance with the backhoe, which was probably way after the 3 months would have passed. And so our negotiation has been, well, hey, it wasn't our fault that we were held back. I can say that yes, as of now, we would have had the assistance given to us with the backhoe. We also went up to about 2 days ago, I went and signed up for the plow. So we are expecting that assistance as well. We were also promised that the wire would be given to us once we would have completed the requirements, which would have mean putting in the poles and so on, which we would have done.
Okay.
So
you've had an ongoing discussion.
We had we had a lot of setbacks, and I would say the fault, and I would say that the Rastafari organization at times would have lapsed on the works, and I think it's one of the things that within the organization we need to work on. But all in all, we were able to do what we were expected to do. And at this point, I would say, because I was always the first down Randy's throat and Huey's throat, so I would say that the assistance with the backhoe we would have had, and we were already signed up and we were promised, hopefully we might have it happen before the week.
The plow.
The plow, sorry.
Okay, and then once that is ready, you say you get the wire.
Well, the wires has been promised.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I think that perhaps then we see how that goes, because I know there are criticisms, the criticisms of all of us, but I have had good confidence in the folks at agriculture, for the simple reason that I think that they have really, what we're dealing with is unprecedented. This government has provided concession not only to established farmers, but even to what we call the backyard farm. So the demands are coming in. And then let us face it as well. And I exempt you from this comment because I understand that what you're doing you're serious about. But you got a whole heap of people that want to fence them yard and come into government and say we do agriculture. Nothing to do with no agriculture. They want to fence the yard.
True.
So you had to weed out some of that as well. You understand? So you had a lot of things, because some of us have an attitude that if it's free, you take two, rather than seeing it for the purpose for which it was intended, which is really to boost production and to help in terms of our food security. But not to detain you from what you're saying, but I just had one other issue on the food security. If you're talking about 7 acres, in the context of Nevis, that's a large farm, because people tend to farm half acre, as the case may be. What kind of produce are you looking at? Is it going to be mixed, or are you going to focus on a single crop? What are you going to be looking at? And second part of that question is, in terms of your farming, is it just to feed yourselves? Are you farming to sell? and to make food available to the community as well, as a commercial sort of undertaking?
Actually, it is going to be an organic farm, and I think this has been one of our.
Explain to us what you mean by
Right,
organic
right.
farm, because that's important.
Meaning a natural farm. Yeah, in terms of the use of natural. If any chemicals, it has to be natural.
Neem.
We would not be using any inorganic fertilizers. We would not be using any pesticides and so on our farm, and we have not been doing that over the years. And I think this has been one of the reasons why we may not have had that level of success and that level of assistance from the department, in that the country is not paying enough attention to organic farming. And I think we really need to realize that the chemicals that we are using are not safe for human consumption.
Okay. Hold your thought, Ira. Okay, go ahead. The caller.
It may be in acceptable amounts, but over the years they would build up. And we see the record, and we realize now, if you're talking food security, you must be talking organic farming, because you would also be talking land conservation, and we know what chemicals and so on and pesticides do to the soil.
So tell me, in terms of the organic farming, you're not using a pesticide.
So
how do you control things like worms and all that come? I never see cabbage yet without worm in it. So how you control that?
There are a lot of products around that are organic, that are biodegradable, that are made from plant extract,
Okay.
like the neem. Neem is one of those very powerful plants that provide that level of security and protection from a lot of insects. It's systemic in that the plants could actually absorb it to the roots. So especially over continuous use of neem, you would build up more and more, you get more and more results from it.
Okay, let's go to the phones. Good evening, you are on the mark. Hello,
Hello, good night. I got you tonight.
you're on the show.
I start now.
Sure, go ahead.
I blessed good evening to Honorable Mark, Grant, and Chai, and you, the announcer, and everybody about safe time
Okay.
from Casildo.
All right,
All right.
thank you, my friend. I
Okay.
appreciate it. Okay, so let me just publicly say now that the lines are open, because people have been trying to call in. 869-469-1616, 869-469-1700. We're here with the One Love
Rastafari movement.
Rastafari movement. They're celebrating 21 years, is it?
Being together.
Of being together, and we have Ras Ira and Ras Marcus with us, and we're having a discussion about a number of things, about vaccination, about farming and organic farming and food security. And I'm surprised that you all have spent an hour on the radio and nobody has yet talked about ganja.
We're coming to
Oh,
that.
you're coming,
That's
okay.
the next thing, because you're asking us how we're going to plant.
Let me go ahead. Let me let you go ahead.
We are going to
Now we
practice.
can't eat ganja.
Of course we can.
We can eat it, you say?
That's the big thing in medicine.
I
Huh?
have never known that we could eat it.
It's very nutritious. yeah. Very
Okay, let's go to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Okay, we lost that caller. Callers, please be patient with us. 869-469-1616. 869-469-1700. It's 5 minutes past the hour of 9 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, you're listening to On the Mark. Straight talk across the Narrows. We have some very special guests this evening in Ras Marcus and Ras Ira. They're celebrating the One Love Rastafari movement 21-year anniversary. 21 years in anything is a long time. And they have been talking about the past. They've been talking about the good work that they've been doing in the community, the struggles that they would have experienced, and also now, as we look to the future, what they can look forward to. So we're talking about agriculture and what you're going to grow, and whether or not you're going to be growing commercially or you're just going to feed yourselves, in terms of the members of the One Love Rastafari order.
Yeah, okay. The name, right? What do you do, right? It will. It will on the plants. He made the plants in such a way that he keep off the worms. You know, he give them that bitter taste. You know, you don't want to eat nothing bitter in your mouth. You don't want anything to taste bitter. So once you're gonna eat something and it tastes bitter, right? Most likely you're not gonna want it anymore. So what the neem do, it give the plant, you know, that kind of a taste, right? That if the worm comes, you know, the worm would not want to bite the plants, anything like that. So that's what the neem does. You know, it's no chemical, right?
Hold your thought. Let's go to the phones. Good evening. You're on the mark. I don't know. For whatever reason tonight, callers, you're not cooperating with us. If you're calling, please be patient. We will get to you. 869-469-1616, 869-469-1700. Those are the two numbers to call. Please be patient when you do. We're having a conversation, an important conversation. If you want to be a part of it, call and we will take your call. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I'm back again. In terms of we deal with the worms and so on. Neem, if you mix the neem with garlic, if you put the garlic in a grater or a blender and you blend that, and you put that juice with the neem, that works wonders. All you have to do is to add something to keep it to stick, like a little cooking oil or something of that nature, and so that it stays on the leaves. And that's master. I've proven that. I've grown cabbages in the hospital yard, and no worms, and more than once using the same method.
Okay, so neem you say with some garlic would work.
Excellent.
Okay.
I have proven that.
Okay. All right. Well, gentlemen, so we get an idea that there could be substitutes for the pesticides and the chemicals. Okay, yeah. I got that. Now, to the question now of a 7-acre farm, because that is quite substantial. What is it we can look forward to? You're saying to me as the Premier of Nevis on the show tonight, and you're saying to the world that you want a partnership with the government, you want fencing wire, you want whatever. So the taxpayers investing in you, in putting this 7-acre farm together, what can Nevis expect in terms of food production from that?
Okay, we could basically let you know what our intentions are for the farm. Because we have started at a level. We have an assortment of fruit trees already bearing on the farm. Coconut, soursop, sugar apple, you know, you name it. We have an assortment of fruit trees. We have attempted over the years potatoes and so on.
Sweet potatoes?
Sweet potatoes,
okay.
Yeah. We are very successful with sorrel. Sorrel is one of our main crops throughout the years.
Let me ask you, sorrel, and for my own edification, because we tend to see sorrel at Christmas time. Sorrel bear all year round?
There's a variety, there's a 3-month variety that you can plant all year and would bear all year round.
Okay, hold your thought. Let's go to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello? Okay, go ahead.
So we are going to get into some mixed cropping, which means there's going to be a variety of fruits and a mixture of crops. And within the mixture of crops, we are going to have ground provisions. We have the cassava is something that we grow a lot as well. Cassava, sweet potato, yams, and tanias. We also going to be getting into the vegetables, the day-to-day vegetables, you know. We are presently, our main focus, belly first. Because with the variety, we want to ensure that we can sustain ourselves. We do not have to go outside our circle to eat. Because then we can guarantee that we are eating organic food, which is the ultimate goal. And we also want to position ourselves to be the leaders in organic food in Nevis. And so that is what we're going to be offering the general public. Because once we grow it, we're going to be selling it on the side right there. We are actually looking into a Jeff-funded project, which would allow us to set up a composting pit. And compost is the alternative to inorganic fertilizers. So we'll be able to make compost, grow our food in compost, and bag and sell compost to the rest of the community. That is the object of that whole project. And so we're talking creating employment, because 7 acres is a lot of land, and most of us who are not old are getting there. with some other, you know, daytime jobs and so on. And so we are talking employment of a couple brethren or sisters to man the farm. We also are going to be cooking the food. We're going to be preparing that organic food in an ITAL style. So this now is going to be available on the farm as well. So it's straight from the ground to the yabba pot, right in your belly. and that's the whole idea. And we are also going to be reactivating, I think we have about 3 wells down on the farm. The whole plan is to reactivate those wells to supply the food with water. Chlorine, well, not the regular water with that higher content of chlorine, but you know, the well water which has proven to be good over the years. And so it's a whole package that we are planning. And we know once we are able to secure our food from the monkeys, which is one of the crucial things that when replacing that fencing, because even though the government is going to help us to get going, we are hoping down the road that we can get the entire 7 acres fence, you know. We must say that we have some traditional farmers who are occupying a few quarter acre here and a quarter acre here on the same plan. But we are not intending to take over the whole land. We are working in a cooperative fashion with them. One of the things that we want to ready ourselves for, and this is not just on our land, but the One Love Rastafari movement, we are going to be having a meeting with the growers in Nevis, food crop growers and traditional ganja farmers, because we're seeing that the cannabis or the ganja industry is set to take off here in the Federation.
So just take a pin. That means you know who the ganja farmers are. Hold that. Let's go to the phone and take a call. Good evening. You're on the mark. Okay, that call is gone as well. So I don't know. We're not doing very well with the calls tonight for some reason. Go ahead, Rasta.
Yeah, we're trying out the call. We're asking people whether you're a farmer, a ganja farmer, are you thinking of it? Come to the meeting, because we want to ready ourselves. We are not quite sure how the government is going to approach the licensing. But we do not want our farmers to become growers, workers of plantation like in the sugar era.
Sure. You want to be owners. Let's go back to the phones. Let's see if we can take this call. Good evening. You're on the mark. Hello?
Yes, greetings all.
Yes, good evening.
Greetings, I.
Greetings. Honorable Premier, these greetings to your honorable guest,
Aye.
Rastafari. We just called to say blessed 21 and, you know, Ireland is going forward.
Aye.
More decades, you know.
Yes, aye.
To the unlimited powers of the Most High. And give thanks. Give thanks. We are on a journey, and as His Majesty has echoed, we are confident in the final victory, you know?
Good over evil.
Blessed love.
Aye. It's last year.
Thank you very much. So, you were talking about marijuana, but I see Ras Marcus wants to make a point. So,
you know, the tourism industry right now has gone to zero.
yes.
And the government, with the people looking for another industry so that we could build up the economy of the country. 'Cause I hear you say tonight that nothing is doing. You know, and you know, I putting it out there right now that the ganja can take the part of the tourism, you know, full that industry, and makes more money, much more than the tourists that come into the country. But we Rastafari, the One Love Rastafari movement, as an organization, is looking forward to play a great role when they're growing, you know, the herb or the ganja, when the time comes for the licenses and so on. Because, you know, over the years, the tribulation that Rastafari been through, you know, the trial, brutalization from the police, not only from the police, from everybody out there. You know what Rastafari being through. So I think it's convenient in these times, that we get the fair share at the ganja.
But you're talking, and let me just understand clearly, because I sit in two governments essentially, at the federal level and here at the local level, and we're getting applications coming in from overseas and interest from so-called foreign investors in relation to marijuana. I have not yet seen any of them that are interested in marijuana for any recreational purposes. What I mean by that is they're not interested in selling a spliff, opening a shop down the road to sell ganja, to sell edibles, as I understand they're called. They don't want to sell no cookie and no brownie. They're interested in research, using the marijuana plant to extract from it cannabinoids and whatever the language is. I'm not so off here with the language, but to extract the chemical content that they feel they can use. One proposal I saw, for example, when I inquired about export, and they said, well, all they'll be exporting would be small packages of vials of whatever they've extracted. I said that because I wanted to understand from you, as you talk about cannabis growers and getting licenses, whether or not your focus was more on the recreational, what we call recreational, mean the same tourists that come and want a spliff and, you know, want high grade or low grade or whatever grade that you can offer them. So you go to a place like Amsterdam and you go to the shops and they actually have everything set out there. You know, they have different products and byproducts. They have sprays, they have, you know, creams, they have all of these things that they would have there. So I'm trying to get a sense from you, when you look to the future, and I agree with you that because of the struggle, and because I think you have been the ones to put in the work that has got us to this point, that you should be in the front of the line. But the question is, which line? In terms of what is it you are interested in doing going forward? What is it, as the One Love Rastafari movement, you would like to see happen, say, in Nevis tomorrow, in terms of marijuana, and where you would want to see yourself positioned?
Well, first, we need more land, you know, because, you know, growing ganja, take it under terms, right? And it's very important that we get more land. We're looking forward to have a personal meeting with you, with the government. We're looking at certain areas in Nevis where we can, you know, get some land so we could expand when the time comes in growing the ganja. We over the past years have gone through the trial, like I said before, right? And the herb is part of our ceremonial going forward as Rastafari. We want to make sure the Rastafari get the same opportunity, like the same investors who are coming in to grow the herb, do whatever it's needed to do with the herb. Whatever is coming out, whether it's going to be oil extraction, you know, for cooking, whatever it takes, right? We need that same opportunity there, just like the investors.
So you're not just talking about growing ganja for man to smoke ganja?
No, we are on a broad base.
Okay. All right.
Right across the board.
Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, the numbers to call 869-469-1616. Let's go to the phones. Good evening. You're on the mark. Hello?
Good night, Mr. Brantley.
Yes, you're on the mark. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good night to all the brethren there.
Good night.
Now, you asked a question that I have been asking all the time, you know. What plans have they begun to put in motion to capitalize on it? Because it's not just enough to grow it. What do you intend to do with it? And what are you doing presently? Because the technology is out there. Have you begun to learn, to research, to practice? Have you considered your outlet? Because that is what I have been thinking. Otherwise, they're going to end up like sugarcane cutters, planting and growing bush. So I want to hear some concrete thing. If they say next week they're going to start, what are you going to do? That's what I want to hear from them. Some concrete plan, not, you know? It should be all figured out by now. And would you want, they use the other species of ganja to make this CDB oil? Would you want support, for example, to bring in those type of seeds or plants? So rather than somebody coming in and bringing them in, wouldn't you rather bring them in yourself so that you own it? All right then.
Okay, thank you very much. The caller raises an interesting point about the research. And you, Ross Marcus, were talking about more land. Part of the problem we have in Nevis, of course, is land and land availability. We don't compare because it's a small island with bigger countries which have, you know. I was in Jamaica some time ago and took a drive, and I see some orange, what do you call it, an orchard? And boy, it's like miles and miles and miles of oranges. Nothing like that could exist in a place like Nevis. We just don't have the land capacity. Government has some small amounts of land here and there, but the reality is that if you're going to do anything here, you have to do it in a technologically savvy way. And I see, for example, watching television, man growing ganja in shade house and greenhouse and things of that nature. You know, they call them grow houses. I think I hear them saying places like Canada and stuff. So, to what extent is that part of the planning? That if you get to that stage, you could, for example, set up greenhouse production as opposed to looking to say I need 50 acres of land to grow marijuana because it may not be available.
Quite a number of questions, and I really would like to touch on them. But to that caller, I know her very well. Thanks for the question, and it would definitely add a lot of substance to this whole program. But yes, we are on track. And I must say, even before the government started to think about the whole cannabis industry, we have been agitating. We would have compiled a proposal to government since way back in 2018 with the ins and outs and what we would like out of the industry to build our Rastafari nation economically. You must also understand that only the sacramental use of cannabis or ganja was afforded to Rastafari, and we weren't allowed any specific economical benefits from the herb. And so that has been a fight, and it's still a fight basically, because it's in our proposal to the government in terms of how they should treat I&I when it comes to the economics, because we are the ones who has been making money off of ganja for all these years. And so it is only fear that no time come for money to be made legally and more money from ganja, that we are not given that opportunity. And so we are saying that our approach to this whole ganja thing the government to us should be on a reparatory justice way, in that because of what you would have done and oppressed us over the years, you should start to compensate us in some small ways, and maybe not so small ways. And one of these ways is free license, and not just free license to grow, but free license to grow, free license to extract, free license to export, to get into whether it's the research, going for the recreational use to satisfy the local demand, which in fact is a very, very big portion of that industry, the local consumption of marijuana. We're not just talking about the use of a spliff, we're talking about making oils where you need pounds of ganja to do that. So we are looking into making oils, and these are things that Rastafari has been doing for all these years. We have been making oils and extractions and edibles. We have been growing herb for local consumption for years. It's nothing new to Rasta. But on the level that we want to take it, we would have advised the government in terms of when they're setting up the various businesses, that these businesses cannot be foreign owned, majority share. These businesses must have a very high percentage of local ownership. And this is in a way securing our ganja industry. We are also talking about benefits to the community in terms of monies, percentages from all the various taxes and so on and the herb.
Let's try this call. See if we can get somebody on the line. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, you're on the mark. Go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening to the One Love organization, and I, as a farmer, Ellis, say One Love to you guys too.
Blessed. One Love.
Yeah, but I have a question. I have something to say to you guys. 1 second, let me turn on the radio. I'm very proud to know that the Rastafari organization have a holistic plan in terms of food production and ganja production on such a beautiful island of Nevis. But what I want to say to the organization and to the serious farmers then, to do food production on the scale at which you want to do it, it's not going to be possible on a low-lying area like land that we have, that we call farmland on the coastline.
True.
We need to have land in the elevated area of the island, which is into the mountain area, to do real food production and to perform our duties in terms of planting these kind of crops and to get mass production in terms of not having to use all these chemicals. You understand?
Yes, sir.
So you guys have to lobby to get land. Not the 7 acre where you got down there. Take the 7 acre and get it higher up in the hills.
That's for the research.
Yeah, where you can plant food trees, because you at the coastline area when the sea salt, the salt from the sea comes in, or the sea get rough, it affects all your crops, and there's only a certain cubic scratch that can survive with that kind of amount of salt that comes in. That's why watermelon sells so well in Nevis, because watermelon love that.
Yes, I.
You know, but I'm really glad for the energy that the man them check, because that's the kind of energy me have that me get this serious fight from. Because even though Marty could have testified for me, I get some assistance to did some fencing on my ground, and the 3 month plowing that I put in for up to now, it have never come forth. But thank God that I put my trust in a man called Almighty God, creator of heaven and earth and all living things. And the same job that I was fighting to do, I was able to get a call from a top shotter in this country, and I perform, I see him work there and I get real money for my work. Then.
Yes,
blessing me, brethren.
Blessing,
Keep fighting, because I never give up this fight. Farmer, maybe one love.
Aye. Blessing.
Blessing.
Yeah, man. Give thanks for that.
All right, well, there you have, and I always admire Ellis. He said, "Poor people fed up." So, it's
but it's a really good point. I mean, we actually have been occupying some lands, in the elevation. We're trying to. These are one of the things that we talking to government about. When Marcus mentioned more lands, we realize the limitations that we have there at Nisbet, but it's a good commercial spot, and so we intend to use it, to suit that. But and serious growing and more acreage. There at Nisbet is where we'll be able to use shared housing. And you mentioned, you asked a question earlier. Is one of the things that we also spoke to Jeff about, because the shared housing also is the attraction for the youths, because these youths are not taking up any hoe and cutlass today. But if they can become a planting within a shared house, using pots and using some of our same compost as opposed to chemicals, where you grow in your compost. You can stay at home and look at your cell phone and know whether your plants need water, or probably turn on your irrigation from at home. These are the kind of things that would attract youths into farming. And for the 21st century, this is how I and I as Rastafari had to position I and I self. Now the challenge would be, how do we keep it organic? But as I just mentioned, you know, instead of the chemical use, you can make your compost and grow in compost. And so there are a lot of different ways in which we can secure food for the future. One of the things that we are also embarking on is actual classes, teaching people how to cook ITAL style. Marcus said vegan, which is a little less than ITAL, but it's acceptable.
Less than?
Of course it's less than
I'm trying to
ITAL.
understand. When you say less than, what do you mean?
Yeah, well, you see, ITAL is very strict, you know. ITAL really stays away from processed food. Even rice is a processed food.
So real ITAL wouldn't have rice?
Real ITAL would be provisions, vegetables, no animal byproducts, absolutely. No egg, no milk, cheese, butter, fish, nothing so. Because you see, your body is a holy temple, is the holy temple. And you should try and keep your body as pure and clean as possible. That just for the psychological advantage, but health-wise, you know, if you can maintain a healthy body, then half of your problems gone.
So tell me about fish, for example.
Fish.
Naturally occurring in the environment. What is the problem with eating fish?
I don't take a life to eat, number one. I don't take a life. Number two.
The plants are growing. So
yeah.
when you
spit out the seed, it go grow.
When you cut the banana, you don't take the banana life.
No, and then the banana go shoot up, right? So that's a different kind of life. But I mean, fish. What do I need from fish that I can't get from a plant? There's nothing that I can get from animal that I cannot get from a plant.
A fish is, for example, protein rich. I think that's the main thing.
The Irish moss is better. The kelp is better. You know, animals cannot manufacture protein. They have to consume the vegetables. So why feed the greens to the pig and then eat the pig? And just eat the greens.
Eat the greens. Okay. I gotta remember that to use. I have to remember that to use that. Why feed the greens to the pig and eat the pig? Just eat the greens.
Just eat the greens, man.
Alright.
That's where you get all the nutrients from. But it is very important because our national organization, we focus a lot on the cannabis industry. And so we have been meeting, and I really can't share a lot with you because technically some of it is still illegal. But we are preparing ourselves for the industry. And we are expecting government to give us the necessary incentives. We're expecting the government to give us the opportunity for training and further research. We are expecting that our naturalists and our herbal doctors be given that level of recognition because they have been administering this thing for years. And so now you can't just come use their thing and want to refer to their thing now as mumbo jumbo and making money from it and not giving them that due credit. And so, you know, we are readying ourselves. We have been talking with companies as well overseas. People been calling us. People been calling individuals like Brother Sankofa, and I must tip my hat to Sankofa again. He's one of our heroes that broke that broke that barrier and made our rights and our reality something that we could enjoy in terms of the use of the herb. And Mark, maybe I can, if I may, because we've had some problems over the past where people been complaining that police been harassing them for ganja and how come they say ganja this, you know. Even though, and we are not satisfied with what we got from the regulations, but a police does not have the authority to come in your yard and take up any ganja plants once you have 5 plants or less.
That's what the law talks about now.
That's what it's exactly. And having 2 ounces of herb on your person in the privacy of your home. There's still a problem in using it and having it in public. And so this is what we would have gotten in the meantime. And I'm saying we are not satisfied, but just to explain to people, plant your 5 trees, have your ganja at home, you know, use it as much as you're accustomed to use it. You're just gonna have to think about going out there in the public and knowing that the system is still fighting it on that level, you know. And so this hopefully will clear up a lot of issues, because you know we've been having to ask and ask and ask again when these things happen. So we also advising the authorities that, you know, we need to go back to the drawing board, and if it means Rastafari has to go back to the courts to get some further leverage, because what's 5 plants?
Well, let's and I think we've had this discussion privately, but I think that part of the issue is that we know perhaps where we want to go, but we also have to look at where we're coming from in relation to marijuana. The claim, as I understood it, in relation to, I think, Sankofa, that's his name, had to do with the constitutionality of the provision, which was closed, I believe, under the rubric of your freedom of religion.
Right.
Where it is said that marijuana, the herb, is part of your sacrament, and as a consequence discriminating against a Rasta as a dedicated group of people who use that as part of their sacrament, is unconstitutional. That, as I understood it, is the case that was made. Now, the court has ruled yes, and as a consequence, invade, and in fact, I think the court went further and say about in the privacy of your home, etc. Right? And you know, you look to that whole, basically, of the privacy of your property, and that is why they made the distinction of between sort of going out in public and what you can do at home. The government is the one that has come now about the 5 plants and things like that, and you could vary that. You could say 10 or 100, you could say 2 ounces or a pound. That is just a question of legislation. But going back to sort of the philosophy behind this, when we had the Cannabis Commission put together, it's interesting that the recommendations that they made did not include recreational use of marijuana. The recommendation that they made to the government said, listen, you got to free it up for religious purposes. That was the Sankofa case, essentially. And you got to free it up for scientific and medicinal purposes. I think where the issues are rising is the recreational use, because whilst you're here and you're talking at a certain level, let's face it, a whole heap of youth out there just want to burn a spliff. Whatever they get from it. A high, a relaxation or whatever, I don't know what they get from it, but that's what a lot of youths are interested in. And you have a lot of men who want to supply that market where they want to sell herb for that purpose. It have nothing to do with religion, because they don't subscribe to any particular religion. They might be Catholic or Anglican, right? It has to do with them recreationally saying, well, listen, I'm out liming or out partying, whatever the case may be, and I want to smoke this. High grade gets me high, whatever the case may be, right? So the law and the legal response thus far has really been to try and solve the Sankofa type case, that approach, try to put in place what the Cannabis Commission was recommending, because I believe the Cannabis Commission had Ras Aya, I think his name is, from St. Kitts, was a part of that, if memory serves.
Right, right.
And he has been quite vocal to say he did not sign on to the final recommendation. But we understand in a group, the majority would say what the final recommendation would be. But I found it interesting because the issue about the recreational use, I think the reason why, legislatively and even in terms of policy, that is a more difficult proposition, still has to do with the characterization of marijuana at the international level. United Nations still characterizes marijuana as a dangerous drug. I think it's a class A drug. How it got there, what the reasons for that, whether or not that is, you know, correct or not, is perhaps at this point beside the point. The point is that it's still there. And so the drugs acts that you see around the region, which mirror each other in great degree, dealt with that and criminalized the growing and the selling and the distribution of marijuana. What we're trying to do here is a kind of, not a full step, but a half step, because you're saying, okay, can you decriminalize for purposes of personal use in small amounts?
But you
Purposes of having it in the privacy of your home. Purposes of you having it as a sacrament for purposes of religion and purposes of medicinal and scientific research. But whether or not a man couldn't walk up and down Pinny's Beach and say, boy, see me have a big spliff here for $100, what you say about that. That I think is an area now that we have not quite got to yet. So I think it's a progression.
you might call it a step. I could agree it's a step, but maybe it's a step backwards.
Backwards.
But really and truly, the rights of the Rastaman to use the herb was in the Constitution for years. It was the government's drug act that violated the rights.
Mm-hmm.
So what he was saying is that all along we were in our right. You know what else is interesting? The country had recognized the medicinal purposes of marijuana for years, because our Customs Act allowed the chief medical officer to import cannabis for use on the patients, and that has been in our act for years. And so it is not that we didn't know. It is not that our country wasn't aware of it. But just like you say, we would have signed on to all these international things, and so we got to follow suit and so on. But what we're saying, look at what is happening now. Look at how this thing is playing out. We need to ready ourselves to be there for the industry. And so the rules and regulations of our country must accommodate that.
Let's go to the phones. It's 20 minutes to the hour of 10 o'clock. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Greetings again. Really, that is so. And it is not only Rastafari that the system has shown and dashed that injustice on our sacramental rights, but Babylon is the culprit of keeping the natural God-given herb, putting and keeping the natural and God-given herb into a comparison drug basket with things like heroin, rum, coke, etc. I can just go on calling them. Babylon put the ganja inside of that and give it a name, cannabis sativa, dangerous drug. So therefore, when one dips into that basket and do not have a consciousness to differentiate from that basket, Babylon turned millions of lives into junkies by moving on, as they would call it, they call ganja the gateway drug. But when one go into that basket and use consciously only the herb, they move not on to nothing else, yes, because they are conscious and be able to differentiate. But what about those who have not been able to differentiate? Babylon have to change. Babylon have to be removed totally, not just to Rastafari. All humanity, remove the herb from inside of that compulsory drug basket.
Yes, aye.
It is a sacrilegious act. It is ungodly. It is unrighteous. Blessed love.
Rastafari.
All right. Yes, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Annie, going back on the herb, Sam, you talk about the research and the herb and so on, and what we've been doing. We have many youths leaving school right now, dealing with the science and so on of, the herb and so on. There's places out there you can go, you don't have to be Rastafari youth, but people are all self-conscious of themselves. can go and do research, study the all about ganja, you know, the importance of the herb. And this has been done over the past years. You know, in Canada, down in Israel, you know, a lot of scientific research are done on the herb and how important it is to, you know, the human intake.
But our youths have to wait until they're 18, Marcus. And that's one of the things that we're telling the government. The restriction on the youths at 18, I don't see the justification. Number one, if you're saying that you're protecting the health of our nation, how come there's no law against youths drinking rum and smoking cigarette? That is so dangerous to them.
There is law in terms of saying the same age issue. Let's go back, because we'll come back to that. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening, Mr. Brantley.
Good evening to you.
Yes. I must commend you, first of all, because those who have been paying attention from the onset of COVID would have remembered that you were one of the first out the gate saying that we have to pay more attention to our agriculture. And I think you, in your recent press conference, as a matter of fact, you made the observation that a lot of produce stores were popping up, setting up everywhere. I don't know if it's the same in Nevis, but certainly in St. Kitts, the market has been flooded with watermelon. And that raises questions about the coordination between the marketing and the production. I think everybody in the Caribbean now realizes that agriculture is important, and everybody has redoubled efforts in that activity. How long that enlightened policy would last is another story, for I strongly suspect that once COVID is over, we will be back to relying on the containers of food from Miami, and the new farmers will probably go back to their cushy taxi driver or hotel jobs in the tourist industry. Marijuana production is another industry that is often talked to death about, but it goes nowhere. I well remember about 2 years ago, I said we will rue the day that we didn't at least consider the proposals of Alki David, I think his name was. He may have jumped the gun in his enthusiasm to do something, but at least it was a start, because look at where we are 2 years later. Our land still in Kasha and Wild Tamarin, nothing has happened, right? I think he took his business to Puerto Rico. The thing is, we weren't getting into business with him for his personality, okay? He had the marketing and the contacts, okay? And at least we would have made inroads into that industry instead of all this foolish talk about recolonization and plantation, back to the plantation system. So my point is, we should be more nimble and more enterprising in our approach to these things. And then the press would not have to be pressing you, Mr. Premier, so hard on what is the plan for recovery and restructuring of our economy post-COVID. Okay, so you know, I don't exactly know where that movement that are your guests tonight would factor into these things, but there's nothing wrong with joint partnerships generally with both the public sector and the private sector in these matters. But you know, like I said, we tend to talk agriculture generally to death, and nothing much happens.
Well, I can tell you that in Nevis, and these two gentlemen are here actually involved, but I think, I can't speak for St. Kitts, but in Nevis, I think we're seeing a renaissance in agriculture.
And you think it will last?
I think it will last because the investment that I'm seeing, I mean, I see some youngsters, you know, agriculture here was something. Rasta used to engage in agriculture, and one or two old people used to engage in agriculture. And even the old people them who engage in it, they tell them picnic or look job in the bank, because this is hard work, right? Yes. I tell people all the time when I was a boy, if I ever dared to tell my mother and father I want to be a fisherman or a farmer, They would beat me from now till tomorrow. Cause
Yeah, but the young people's expectations these days are different.
well, what I'm trying to say is that I think even amongst those, because some of the youngsters I see now setting up shade houses and greenhouses using the technology, university graduates who have come back. I see some young people, when I tell young people, people in their 20s and things, who are going into it as a business, who are seeing the commercial. So what I'm seeing is the level of investment that some are making. Seems to my mind to be significant, and as a result of that, that is why I have some confidence that it will last. You see this shade house technology popping up all around Nevis now. So in addition to the traditional farming, you're also seeing a lot of leafy vegetables, things like the tomatoes and things are being grown in these facilities. I have a guy, the Mackie Truss, with A1 Farms. He's doing a phenomenal job growing microgreens, stuff like that. And I know these are guys who are doing it at a commercial level. It's not a hobby for them. So that is why I have some cautious
and do you have equal optimism about us, well, the general public, changing their lifestyle, their habits of supermarket shopping from?
Well, I don't really have a problem where you buy it. I think this is where now policy becomes relevant, because
a lot of the supplies for the supermarkets come from
yes, but that's what I'm saying. The policy becomes relevant, because I know in Nevis still, if we have an abundance of whatever product, we restrict the importation for the period. So I think policy is going to be critical.
You have the capacity to do that.
We still do that.
If it comes from CARICOM countries.
Well, CARICOM you would not be able to do it.
You would not be able to, right?
But what I'm saying is that you can sometimes still achieve it through partnership with the entities. What needs to happen is you need a proper dialogue and proper partnership with the supermarkets, the hotels, etc. Because, for example, Rams just agreed to take how many ever hundreds of pounds of fish.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Right? That is a new partnership Rams is embarking on.
Yeah, really good.
Right? So if you can get more of that, and we have a very good rapport in Nevis with the supermarkets, with the marketing division. So when them guys have squash or they have pumpkin, the supermarket knows it make no sense they're going to bring pumpkin from somewhere when they could get it available. So I think once our people too, because that's been an issue on the pricing. I've been having an ongoing argument. I don't even want to mention the word pork because I'm in the presence of Rasta. But I've been having an ongoing argument with some pig farmers. And they're saying that they're selling their pork at $7, $7.50, whatever it may be, per pound. And that is in fact more expensive than pork brought in from Brazil. In the supermarket. And I don't know. That's the position
that's the point. I mean,
well, no, but hear me out.
Like anybody else,
but hear me out. From a position of pure economics, I am saying that if pork is produced in a country as big as Brazil, we understand they have the benefits of the economies of scale. But that pork has to be produced, so it has to be grown, slaughtered, transported over land to the docks wherever they may be, transported by sea, more than likely to Miami. Refrigerated, packaged, transported again to St. Kitts Nevis. You put on your duty, your VAT, your custom service charge, put on the profit for Rams, and them still sell it cheaper than a man who grow 2 pigs in the backyard.
Yes, but at the same time, Mr. Brantley, you can't expect, and that's the thing, if there's a competing industry that they can go into, that can support their families with the kind of lifestyle to which they're accustomed to, you can't expect them to go into something to
no, Carlo, you're talking about a different point. I'm talking about the issue of, use one example, pork. Fish again is another example. Nobody could tell you why a pound of fish costs $15. Because the fisherman,
that's what I'm saying.
The fisherman himself.
You have to be prepared. Either the government has to be prepared to subsidize agriculture, or they're going to have to stick with those prices, because agriculture must be able to provide those people who are involved in it with at least a similar standard of living.
But Carla, I understand your point, but let us not put all the responsibility in the government, because agriculture is one of those areas which, in my respectful view, gets maximum assistance from governments, not just in St. Kitts Nevis, but regionally.
Right. I mean, practically every country subsidizes
People involved in agriculture get duty free, them get all kind of thing to assist. But the point that I'm making is that a lot of people, in my view, are not functioning in a commercially prudent way. They're not analyzing and saying, well, okay, here's what it costs to produce a pound of pork, and therefore I can sell it for this. If I sell it for that, I command a bigger market share. And that is a way that you grow. Because I am having real difficulty understanding that a man grow a pig in Brazil, and with all of those costs that I have identified, that pound of pork still end up in Rams in Nevis cheaper than a man who go down a Four Seasons every night and ask them what food they got, leftover food, and go to the farms and get leftover watermelon and feed the pig them in the backyard, and still say he wants $7-8 a pound when you can go and get it at Rams at $4 a pound with imported pork.
Well, I mean, it's market forces too. I mean, if people buying it at that kind of price, it means that it can be it's sustainable.
All right. Well, we're out of time. You're calling a little too late because I was enjoying the conversation. Thanks a lot for that. Gentlemen, we got 5 minutes left, so I hand things over to you again. Yes.
Yeah, I want to go back to the One Love Eye Liberation continues with the questions and questions and answer segment over Van Radio on Friday and going into Saturday morning. And then on Saturday itself, we're going to have a celebration of activities, something here you call Ujoma, which is one of the principles of Kwanzaa. You know? Ujama, one of the principles of Kwanzaa. It's going to be a combination of our anniversary activity, and we're looking forward for everybody to turn out to that celebration that we're going to be putting on Saturday. You're going to start from about 9 o'clock in the morning until...
And where is it going to be? Location?
At Natural Liberty, right in front of the Patchy. We're going to be selling ITEL food, natural vegetables, crafts, anything, etc., you know.
So not vegan, ITEL.
Well, you're going to have some vegan stuff and you have the ITEL stuff as well.
I'm learning there's a difference tonight. So all the time when Brown was growing up, I thought I eating ITEL with rice and things. So that's not the real deal. You're telling me.
Don't tell anybody about it. I say so. You know.
All right.
I would just like to wrap up by recognizing the members of the One Love Rastafari movement who really been working over the years. I also want to big up our elders in the house. We have Elder Timber, Elder Mansa, and Elder Iba. And we know the struggle of Rastafari in Nevis started long before the One Love Rastafari movement. And so we want to recognize the elders, Watusi and Whipstick and Abju and Bushman and, you know, Loves, all these brethren who were treading Rastafari when I was a little boy going to school and not even Barnet. So we want to just say to the Rastafari community, hold firm, come on out, let us bind together. We have a lot of work to do. Rastafari is a serious movement that looking towards the liberation of our people at home and abroad. So one and all, give thanks for the support over the years, and we look forward to the continued support from the general public and from the government as well. One love.
Yes, and I would also like to give thanks for the matriarch of the organization, Empress Shelley, for all her hard works over for the past years. I know you see already Ethiopian creed. Prince and princesses shall shout out of Ethiopia. The most of Ethiopia, the Irish shot into and I heart to dwell. In the path of righteousness lead us. Help us to forgive, so that we must be forgiven. Teach us love, loyalty, and earth as it is in Mount Zion. Angels us with a wise mind, knowledge and understanding to thy will. The blessing now with us over the Most High. So let the hunger be fed and naked be clothed, the infants care for the sick be nourished, the aged be protected and shelter for the shelterless. Deliver us from the hands of our enemies, that we may be fruitful in these perilous days. Our enemies passes by and dig in the depths of the sea. in the depths of the earth, in the belly of the beast, or in the lake of fire. Give us a place to the everlasting kingdom, to the power of the King of kings and the Lord of lords, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. He left himself and light to the world, his own divine majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie, what the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning without end, the first and forever, and the protector of all human faith and the ruler of the universe. For Haile Selassie, King Rastafari, Empress Meni, great ancestors, great gods and goddess of the ancient and black eternal race. Glory to word and glory to sound, glory to the power of the living eye. Haile Selassie, King Rastafari. So let the words of thy mouth and the meditation of thy heart be accepted in thy sight. Haile Selassie, strength and thy redeemer. Rastafari, one perfect love. And we give thanks, Mr. Bradley, for having us.
Okay, the music has struck up. That means we have to go. Thank you, gentlemen. Ras Marcus, Ras Ira, I think we had a very interesting conversation this evening. Thank you for coming. The show is always open to you, as you know, and continue the good work that you have been doing. That's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for all who called. Thanks for participating. Thanks for listening. And this show is rebroadcast tomorrow at 1 p.m. right here on the Eastern Caribbean's only powerhouse, VON Radio, the voice of Nevis. Thank you, good night, and God bless you.
Yes.
All right, give thanks.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcast